Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Alexander. And if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this. Lies never stay hidden forever. No matter how carefully someone tries to cover them up, no matter how convincing they sound, or how long they've been getting away with it, the truth always finds a way to come out. And that's exactly what happened in this story. I trusted her. I trusted her family. And for a while, I believed everything she said. I didn't question anything because I had no reason to. They all acted like I was part of their family already. And I believed that. I met Chloe at a wedding, not ours obviously. It was the wedding of a mutual friend. I just went to support my friend, eat, dance a bit, and head home. But at some point during the reception, I ended up sitting next to her at a table. She smiled, made a joke about the DJ playing the same song twice, and that kicked off a light, casual conversation. Before we left, we exchanged numbers. But that simple moment would eventually change the direction of my life. Over the next few months, we kept talking. At first, it was just friendly chats here and there. Then, it became regular. Calls turned into meetups. Conversations turned into deep talks. We got to know each other's little quirks. Before long, I found myself catching real feelings. After a while of dating, I sat her down one evening and told her that I had no intention of playing games or wasting her time. I told her clearly that I saw her as someone I wanted to build a life with. I told her I wanted her to be my wife. She smiled and said she felt the same. Everything about her seemed right. So it made sense. Before I proposed, she suggested I come meet her family. Said it was important that I got to know the people closest to her. So we planned a 2-day weekend trip to visit her parents and her sister. And I'll be honest with you, I was nervous. Meeting the family is a big step. But from the moment I walked in, they treated me like I'd known them for years. So, after we got back home, I bought the ring, planned something simple, and proposed. She said yes. We told our friends and family. The congratulations came pouring in. We decided to keep the engagement short, 6 months. Just enough time to plan a proper wedding without dragging things out. About a month after the engagement, we agreed to move in together. Some people wait until after marriage, but for us, it just made sense. The wedding was already around the corner, and it felt right to start building our home together. We were acting like a married couple already. At the time, I honestly thought I had found my forever person. But looking back now, I realized that was just the calm before a storm I never saw coming. 2 months before the wedding, I came home from work completely drained. It had been one of those long, stressful days at the office, and I was trying to relax. Chloe walked into the living room. She sat down next to me and said her dad had just texted her. Apparently, the family was planning to take a trip together before the wedding. A final bonding moment before she became a married woman, she said. I remember her exact words. It's something we've done every now and then as a family. My dad wants us to take one last trip before everything changes. Out of curiosity, I leaned over to see the message myself. And there it was, her dad's name, the text, everything looked real. The message mentioned something about making memories and doing a road trip with several stops along the way. It sounded pretty wholesome. I didn't question it. Why would I? This was Chloe, and I trusted her completely. It never crossed my mind that there could be anything strange going on. If her dad wanted to spend quality time with his daughter before the big day, who was I to get in the way of that? I nodded, told her it sounded like a nice idea. Looking back now, I wish I had asked more questions. The night before the trip, Chloe packed a small overnight bag. But what stood out to me that evening was how glued she was to her phone. I figured she might be chatting with her sister or making last-minute plans with her family. But looking back now, that assumption was the beginning of a lie I didn't even know I was living in. The next morning, I woke up early to get ready for work. And since we only had one car at the time, I offered to drop her off at her parents' house before heading to the office. During the drive, she told me her dad had the whole thing mapped out. She described how they'd be stopping at historical towns, small museums, and family landmarks along the way. Said it was something they'd done for years to stay connected as a family. I admired it. I thought it was beautiful that her family valued memories over fancy destinations. When we pulled up to her parents' place, she hugged me tight. As I drove off, I remember already missing her. I had no idea then that everything she told me about that trip was a complete lie. So, after Chloe left for the so-called family trip, the first 2 days were quiet, but I brushed it off. I assumed they were busy settling in or out sightseeing. I called her around 7 p.m. that second night. She didn't pick up, but a few hours later, she texted back saying they had poor network reception in that area. That made sense, right? I didn't press it, but then things started feeling off. By the third night, I felt that urge to hear her voice. But when I dialed her number around 10 p.m., it rang twice, then straight to voicemail. That was odd. Normally, if she couldn't talk, she'd still text something like, "Can't talk now, call you later," or she'd call back in 10 minutes. But that didn't happen. I stayed up till midnight waiting for a reply, but nothing. The next day, she finally replied around noon. She said they were in a remote area again, barely any signal. At this point, I was starting to feel something wasn't right, but I pushed the thought away. She kept replying to my texts late, never answering my calls. And when she did reply, it was always short messages. She sent pictures of just herself and nothing about her family, claiming she will get them from her sister's camera later. 1 week later, just like she said, Chloe came back. She even brought back some small souvenirs, said she had a good time with her folks, and jumped right back into wedding planning. I looked at her and thought, she's here now, we're good. But a few days after her return, I was doing laundry. I usually handle my own clothes, but since we were living together and I had a lighter workload that day, I figured I'd help and toss in a few of her things too. Just a few of her t-shirts and the jeans she wore during the trip. I always check pockets before throwing anything into the machine, because you never know what might be left inside. That's when I found some hotel receipts. Multiple ones. Different dates, different locations. At first, I didn't make much of it. I figured maybe they had to stop at hotels during the trip. But then I noticed some receipts had her name on them. Others had a man's name I didn't recognize. And the places listed weren't along any road trip route she mentioned to me. That doesn't make sense. Something wasn't adding up, and this was the first real crack in the story, she told me. That evening, Chloe was in the kitchen making dinner, and as usual, she left her phone on the couch. It wasn't locked. She never really bothered with passwords, maybe because she thought I would never check. But after what I found in her pockets earlier that day, it didn't feel like snooping anymore. I picked up her phone, went to her email, and started scrolling through her inbox. I was searching for something that would either put my fears to rest or confirm what my gut was already screaming. I got the digital receipts. She had paid for several hotel bookings using her card. Some were under her name, and others were under a name I didn't recognize at first. But I knew right then that this wasn't a coincidence. These bookings matched the exact days she was supposedly on that family trip. I copied the man's name and searched it in her contacts. Sure enough, he was saved under a casual name. But when I clicked into the message thread, the truth was undeniable. The messages were affectionate and emotional. They talked like a couple. Then I saw a photo he had sent her. It was a picture of her, asleep. That was all I needed. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. She had been seeing this man long before we got engaged. I kept replaying everything in my head. Her reluctance to show pictures from the trip. Her phone being unreachable most nights. The vague stories. It all made sense now. She was never with her family. She was with him. But it didn't stop there. I felt like I was already neck-deep in lies, so I kept going. I checked her messages with her mom. At first, it was just regular mother-daughter chatter. But then I saw messages about the trip. The trip was a cover. Her mom and dad were in on it. They had helped set her up with this man, the son of a prominent lawyer from their church who had returned from abroad. Chloe's dad even wrote, "He's a more suitable man for your future." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just betrayed by the woman I wanted to marry. I was played by her entire family. They smiled in my face, welcomed me into their home, and the whole time, they were using me as a placeholder. It was one thing for Chloe to cheat, but to know her parents were part of it? That broke me in a way I can't even explain. So, Chloe walked into the living room. I stood up and told her, "There's an emergency. Your parents called. We need to go." I kept my voice calm, but there was an edge to it. She blinked, confused. "What happened?" she asked. I just shook my head and said, "It's better we talk to them directly. We have to leave now." She moved toward the table where her phone was charging and reached for it, but I stepped in and said, "Your parents asked me to hold it." She paused and looked at me funny, unsure, maybe a little suspicious, but still not connecting the dots. She just gave a slow nod and grabbed her purse. I could see it in her eyes. Something wasn't adding up for her, but she didn't know what yet. The entire drive, I didn't say a word. Not one. She tried to ask questions a few times. Is someone sick? Did something happen to my sister? But I didn't answer. I kept my eyes on the road. I was afraid if I spoke, everything would come out too soon, and I needed this to happen face to face. She sat beside me in complete silence after a while, probably running through every possible scenario in her head. But I doubt she imagined the one I was about to hit them all with. When we pulled into her parents' driveway, I saw them through the front window. They weren't expecting us. Her dad opened the door, looking surprised and a little confused. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked. Her mom stepped out behind him, and then her sister. Chloe stood beside me, still looking for answers. I didn't respond to anyone at first. I just walked past them into the living room and waited for them all to follow. Once we were all inside, and they were all staring at me, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the receipts. I held them up, not saying a word at first, then spread them out on the coffee table. Then, still holding her phone, I went to her messages, straight to the chats with the other guy, and started reading the messages out loud. When I finished reading, I looked at each one of them, one by one. "You all think I'm stupid," I said. "Thank you for letting me waste all this time loving your daughter, while all of you lied straight to my face." Chloe broke down immediately. She dropped to her knees crying, trying to grab my hand. "Please, just let me explain, please," she kept saying, tears streaming down her face. But I just looked at her and said, "There's nothing left to explain." And there wasn't. I walked out. For me, it was already over. There was one person left I needed to talk to, the other man. I just needed him to know the full story. So I sent him a message. I told him everything. How I had been engaged to Chloe, how we were supposed to get married in a matter of weeks, how I thought she was on a family trip when in reality, she was holed up in a hotel with him. I didn't sugarcoat a thing. I gave him every detail I had, because he deserved to know just as much as I did. He replied after a while. His first words were, "Wait, what? She's engaged." I could tell from his reaction that he genuinely didn't know. He said he thought they were just dating, nothing too serious, and she had only told him vague things about her relationship status before. Then he apologized, over and over again. He said if he'd known, he never would have entertained anything with her. And then he said something that stuck with me. He said, "I can't trust a woman or a family who would orchestrate a plan like this." And I believed him. I told him I had already ended things with her. He responded that he'd be doing the same. And that was it. But of course, the story didn't end there. A few days later, the messages started coming in from Chloe. In fact, her desperation kicked into high gear. I don't know exactly what the other guy told her after I messaged him, but I suspect that when he cut her off, reality finally hit her. She lost both of us. So now she started scrambling, trying to piece things back together. She texted me long paragraphs, even voice notes. One of the texts read, "I love you so much, but my parents pressured me to give the other guy a chance." At that point, nothing she said made a difference. Because how could I believe anything coming from her? Her entire family was built on lies. They lied with straight faces, smiled while doing it, played innocent. I started thinking back to all our time together, wondering how many times she had looked me in the eye and told me something that wasn't true. How many stories she told me that I never questioned. How many moments she laughed at my jokes while texting another man on the side. And that's the thing. Once trust is gone, even the good memories start to feel fake. I kept asking myself the same question. Was I ever really the one she wanted, Or was I just the backup plan until something better came along? Looking back on everything that happened, I've had a lot of time to sit with my thoughts. There were days I found myself replaying every little sign I might have missed. But at the end of it all, I realized that pain, when processed honestly, can teach you lessons no classroom ever will. And if there's one thing I've taken from this whole experience, it's this. Trust isn't something you hand out just because someone looks you in the eye and says the right words. Trust has to be earned. I gave my trust freely, to a woman I loved, to a family I respected, and they used it like a blindfold, covering my eyes while they planned something behind my back. But the thing about lies is they rot from the inside out, and sooner or later they fall apart. Another lesson that hit me hard is that words mean nothing without actions to back them up. People can be excellent actors, warm, kind, smiling in your face, while doing the exact opposite when you're not looking. Chloe told me she loved me. Her parents said they were happy to have me as a son-in-law. But their actions told another story. They were already working behind the scenes, introducing her to another man, planning a different future, one that didn't include me. That disconnect between what they said and what they did, that's where the truth lived. If someone's words are sweet, but their actions leave a sour taste, believe the actions. Every time. Lastly, I've learned that a relationship built on lies, no matter how beautiful it looks on the outside, is already dead. Love without truth is a performance, not a partnership. And I didn't sign up to be an actor in someone else's show. I wanted something real, and I still do. But next time, I'll make sure the foundation is solid, not hollow. So now, I'll turn it over to you watching this. If you were in my shoes, if you found out just weeks before your wedding that the person you loved had been lying to you, that their entire family helped cover it up, and that you were never really part of their long-term plan, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading them.